Wood Park on this special day in the football calendar. The FA Cup third round between Blackburn Rovers at the top of the second division against Kettering Town, 7th in the GM Vauxhall Conference. The team news for this afternoon: Colin Hendry has failed to recover from the ankle knock he took on New Year's Day against Cambridge, but the good news is that Scott Sellers is back. So the Rovers line up as follows: in goal, Bobby Mims; 2, Richard Brown; 3, Alan Wright; 4, Gordon Cowans; 5, Keith Hill; 6, Kevin Moran; 7, Craig Skinner; 8, Mark Atkins; 9, Mike Newell; 10, David Speedy; 11, Scott Sellers, and their 2 substitutes. At 12, Simon Garner. And at 14, the man who scored that winner in the last few minutes against Cambridge, Nicky Reid. The visitors, Kettering Town. They'll be relieved that John Graham, the top goal scorer, who was injured in the home defeat 3-1 against Boston United on New Year's Day, although he hasn't made a full recovery from the knee injury, does take his place as substitute. So the visitors from Northampton, Kettering Town. In goal, Paul Bostock; 2, Richard Uxford; 3, Paul Jones; 4, Paul Nicol; 5, Gareth Price; 6, Trevor Slack; 7, Dougie Keast; 8, Phil Brown; 9, Trevor Christie; 10, Paul Bancroft; 11, Richard Hill, and their 2 substitutes at 12, John Graham, and 14, Dave Waller. A change of referee this afternoon. It should have been Bob Nixon. He's been replaced by David Phillips, as Gordon Cowans gives it back to Keith Hill, and he's forced into a hurried clearance by Trevor Christie. Played a number of times on this ground, of course, mainly for Leicester City, so no stranger to this level of competition. And the man now, Richard Brown, take great pleasure if he manages to beat Kettering Town, because they're his ex-club. Joined Rovers 2 or 3 years ago from this non-league outfit, so he'll be out to show just how much he's advanced since he moved into the Football League with the home side, Blackburn Rovers. And he takes the throw now to David Speedy, out wide to Alan Wright, who will be glad to renew his partnership with Scott Sellers. Making his own way down the left, first time ball in, hooked away by Paul Jones, up to Dougie Keast, before he's robbed by Gordon Cowans. Inside by Craig Skinner, yet again making a welcome return to the blue and white half shirts. A natural right winger, so he'll fit in quite comfortably on that side of the pitch. So as usual, the Rovers, whenever possible, injury permitting, turning out with 2 out-and-out wide men, with David Speedy and Mike Newell to pick up the centres once they get them across. Hooked into the box, Richard Brown quickly into the challenge, and a good clearance as danger threatened from the non-league men in the first few minutes. Inside to Paul Jones. Good challenge by Mark Atkins, and Mike Newell won't welcome that Hurley challenge if that's a sign of the robust play that's going to come from Kettering Town. But they are a footballing side, so I don't think that's any indication of their tactics for the match. Mike Newell beaten in the air by Paul Nicol. And Alan Wright with the throw down the line to Mike Newell. Hemmed in the corner by Richard Hill. So he blaze it back to Alan Wright. Scott Sellers. Mike Newell with a cross in beyond David Speedy as he flicked ahead at it. He just missed. Richard Brown with the cross. Speedy denied this time by the central defender, Craig Skinner. looking to get another good quality cross in. That one drifts behind and out of play for a goal kick. Well, if you want to know what FA Cup third round day means, the only thing you need to do is look at the mass ranks of red bedecked supporters behind Paul Bastock in that goal at the Darwin end. I walked up from Lower Darwin before this match and there were streams of coaches making their way up to the Furnace Hotel to park, and cup tie fever has certainly hit Kettering in no uncertain terms. Alan Wright, Bobby Mims can't keep it in, just drifts over the goal line and the first corner of the match to Kettering Town. In by Trevor Slack, and hooked away by the Rovers defence. And Richard Brown with a calm clearance up the line to Craig Skinner, and then advances forward to get the return ball. Trying to launch Mark Atkins on the goal, and at one time he looked as though he might outpace the number 5, Gareth Price. But he was just quick enough to get back. Paul Bastock with a clearance, and Keith Hill up above Trevor Christie. Alan Wright just ballooning it up in the air, headed on by Paul Jones. The flag's raised and the whistle blows. Offside given. Craig Skinner with Paul Bancroft. Keith Hill. Rovers ballooned a few clearances up in the air. Perhaps not readjusted from the match against Cambridge yet. Nice bit of footwork now though from David Speedy and Mike Newell, and a loose back pass finds its way to David Speedy, but he can't find his striking colleague, and the ball cleared. Keith Hill. Calm piece of work taken away from Trevor Christie. Put it on a plate for Kevin Moran. A beautiful ball inside the defence to Alan Wright. But a good challenge in from Richard Uxford. And he gets the reward of the throw off the shins of Alan Wright. Mark Atkins to David Speedy. Gordon Cowans picking out Richard Brown. Really does look in determined mood today as he puts Mike Newell in. And a corner given. Good save by Paul Bastock. Just getting a fingertip on it and knocking it over the crossbar. So the first real chance of the game comes the way of the Rovers in the form of Mike Newell. But for the flying shape of the purple-clad goalkeeper between the sticks, it could well have found the top corner and given the Rovers the lead. But they denied that. They've got to settle for a corner. Confusion as to which side of the pitch it should be taken from, but that's all sorted out now, and Gordon Cowans makes his way across to take it. Flicked away by Paul Nicol. Mike Newell to Scott Sellers, who'd hung back outside the box. Gordon Cowans, space and time. Presents it to Craig Skinner, who's loving this duel down this right-hand side. He outpaced Paul Bancroft, but just a little too much on the ball, and it ran out for the goal kick before he could sling the centre in. But on 2 or 3 occasions now, Craig Skinner's shown a clean pair of heels to this Kettering defence, and the only thing that's lacking is a quality cross. But going off previous matches, I'm sure that Craig Skinner will get his sights right and deliver them very soon. Richard Brown up with Trevor Christie. Gordon Cowans, Alan Wright giving Akers a room out there. If Kettering don't learn that lesson, they'll pay the penalty soon. And yet again, Paul Nicol sends Mike Newell to the turf. And a quick word from David Phillips. As the pace of this big number 10 is certainly troubling this Kettering defence in the early stages of this match. Kevin Moran with a free kick. Flicked away from Speedy. Picked up by Richard Hill. Back to Trevor Slack. Trevor Christie beaten in the air by Keith Hill. Really is showing fine form, Keith Hill, at the moment, as is this man, David Speedy. Is sent to block by Gareth Price, and Gordon Cowans with another chance to take a corner, and both Kevin Moran and Keith Hill advancing forward to the edge of the box. Fisted away by the goalkeeper. Not as far as he would have liked. Mike Newell laying it off to Scott Sellers. Newell with the cross. Keith Hill. Gordon Cowans shouts for it and gets it, and then tries to set the Rovers attack going forward. Craig Skinner. Now Richard Brown down the line, but asking too much of David Speedy. But certainly in the first 10 minutes of the match, the first thing that strikes you is the fact that the Rovers seem about a yard faster than the non-league side. And you've really got to expect that when you're talking about full-time training and also the calibre of the Blackburn Rovers outfit these days in comparison to the part-timers. But that'll count for nothing if the Rovers don't find the back of the net. They've got to make their advantage in experience and skill tell, and the sooner the better. Keith Hill planting it straight to the feet of Richard Huxford, but then does a good job of intercepting the ball with Trevor Christie in a dangerous position behind him. Craig Skinner into midfield to David Speedy. Mark Atkins possibly a little too casual with that ball, and Richard Huxford penalised for the foul on Scott Sellers, much to the disgust of his supporters behind that goal. Short pass by Scott Sellers. Richard Brown with a cross. Inside by Kevin Moore, and shot by David Speedy. Crashes into the crossbar and flies behind the netting. Well, the Rovers won't come nearer to that from finding the back of the Kettering net. And David Speedy didn't hesitate in cracking that shot in, and very nearly opened his FA Cup account for the Rovers to go with the 11 goals he's got in the league. Quite astounding this season as to how many times the Rovers have found the woodwork. It must be about at least 10 occasions this season that piece of white wood has kept the ball out of the back of the net. Paul Bancroft back to Richard Huxford, but he's hurried into his clearance, and the end result is a throw by Richard Brown. David Speedy. Richard Hill back to Richard Huxford again. Kevin Moore and to Atkins, swept wide to Alan Wright. In turn, he keeps it going down that touchline to Mike Newell. Mark Atkins. Craig Skinner. Atkins with a unerring pass straight to the feet of Richard Brown. David Speedy twists and gets it across. Scott Sellers looking for room. Kettering out to deny him, but his twinkle toes are at work again. Cross him, but nobody on the end of it. Both Craig Skinner and Mike Newell a yard away from where Scott Sellers required them to be. But just coming up to the quarter of an hour mark, the threat on the Kettering goal is building by the minute. Alan Wright bringing it down nicely to David Speedy. Plenty of room until the tackle comes in from Dougie Keast. Kettering quite happy to calm it down, catch the breath for a minute after that burst of activity from the home side. Flicked towards Trevor Christie. Kevin Moran too good for him. And Mike Newell collects and plays it into the path of Mark Atkins. Alan Wright can't find David Speedy. It's intercepted by Gareth Price and then cleared. Alan Wright does well to keep it in. Ball drops to Mike Newell. Scott Sellers, room on the right for Craig Skinner. Had to pull up to stay onside. And that break in his pace just ruined that Rovers move, as Paul Bancroft was able to nick the ball away from him and get it back to Paul Bastock. Alan Wright there, ahead of Phil Brown. David Speedy. Paul Nicol with the ball forward, but no chance of any Kettering play again anywhere near that. Gordon Cowans happy enough to let Bobby Mims have it and tell everybody to push forward up towards the halfway line. Cut out by Paul Nicol. Alan Wright gets it back from Scott Sellers, but that move breaks down. Chance for the Rovers to build up again. Kevin Moran having a glance upfield and then deciding that there's no real option up there and it's easier to push it back to Bobby Mims. Mike Newell flicked down. Craig Skinner trying to get on the end of it. Robbed by Paul Bancroft, but David Speedy robs him in turn. Richard Brown with a cross. It ricochets off Kettering players and away. Phil Brown caught in possession. And a free kick conceded by Kettering, who are having difficulty in the last 10 minutes getting out of their own half of the pitch. Speedy up, headed away from him though, as that Cowan's free kick tried to pick him out. Trevor Christie hit forward, trying to find Phil Brown. Good tackle by Gordon Cowans. More of a cup tie feel to this match now as the tackles go flying in. Phil Brown once more. Can't elude Kevin Moran and doesn't even win the throw. Gordon Cowans taking it away from Richard Hill. Another well-known player in this Kettering ranks, having had a good spell with Northampton and a briefer one with Watford. And a neat and cool piece of play by Gareth Price. Takes the ball away from the danger zone. Alan Wright out to Mike Newell, who's finding acres of room on that left-hand side. Cross in just above David Speedy. But Trevor Slack taking no chances at all, and bullets a header behind for a corner. Gordon Cowans yet again going to take it on the left hand side, just as he has the earlier ones from the right. And yet again Keith Hill and Kevin Moran going up to reinforce the Rovers forward line as Cowans whips it in. straight across the 6-yard box, eluding defender and attacker alike. Keith Hill, Mike Newell, little dink into the box to Craig Skinner, who's happy enough to settle for the corner off the boot of Gareth Price. So Gordon Cowans with Scott Sellers coming short. In fact, it's Craig Skinner. That was Gordon Cowans trying to get up and get the header in. Kettering breaking out from defence. Paul Bancroft trying to set Dougie Keast away on this left-hand side. Alan Wright quickly across from the other flank to balk his path. He not only does that, but also causes him to misdirect his pass. So Richard Brown with the throw to David Speedy. Inside the full-back, but Craig Skinner can't latch onto it. And Gareth Price, who's looked a very cool customer in the middle of this Kettering defence, yet again shows a calm piece of work and gets it back to his goalkeeper. Phil Brown inside to Richard Uxford. Good run up the touchline. Phil Brown picking up the pieces, crossing, blocked by Richard Brown. Otherwise Richard Hill could have been the hero of Northamptonshire. Good move up that right hand side by Kettering. Phil Brown involved in it twice on his cross, causing quite a bit of consternation in the Rovers defence as Richard Hill swivelled, got his shot in, but it came off Richard Brown's body and away. So the first time that Kettering have really threatened danger to Bobby Mims' Citadel. And perhaps a warning to the Rovers that they've got to make this territorial advantage pay. Scott Sellers attempting to do so now on a long run, but misreading Craig Skinner's intentions, and the ball just running away for a goal kick. Trevor Christie neatly taking it down. Paul Bancroft planting it forward. Phil Brown becoming more and more prominent in the last 5 minutes. He's the top goal scorer for Kettering in the Cup. He's managed 5 goals in the competition so far. Paul Bancroft trying to shug off Craig Skinner, can't do so. Forced to give it back to Gareth Price. Long ball forward. Richard Hill reads it better than Richard Brown, but the ball's out. Neatly brought down by Gareth Price. Sorry, it was Paul Jones. And that's the man who yet again shows a neat piece of footwork. And then Kevin Moran goes flying into him. And we have the first booking of the match in the 23rd minute. Kevin Moran's name entered into David Phillips' book. I think any Football League player would have been proud of that display of skill from the number 3 of Kettering, Paul Jones. wide across the box. Mike Newell there, and again. Break nearly on there, but David Speedy couldn't find Scott Sellers. Paul Jones inside. Cut out by Keith Hill. And Richard Brown back to Bobby Mims. Craig Skinner with Paul Bancroft. Drops to Mike Newell. And a comical moment there as Trevor Slack had no chance of getting out of the way of the big man. And they seemed for a moment as though they were doing a waltz before they both ended up in a heap on the deck. And the free kick has gone the way of the home team. So Gordon Cowans swinging it in over the far side. David Speedy knocked away by Richard Huxford, but Speedy in possession now. Cross in. Paul Nicol away this time. Mark Atkins looking for support. Scott Sellers there. Holds it up. Waits for Atkins to advance forward up that touchline. But then decides to try and find Mike Newell and fails to do so. And roars his frustration into the skies. I must admit it's nice to see Scott Sellers back weaving his patterns out on that left-hand touchline. Beyond Trevor Christie. Phil Brown there, intercepted by Alan Wright, and it was a good job Keith Hill was there. Otherwise, Alan Wright's interception could have caused some embarrassment to him. Paul Nicol chasing back. Kevin Moran away. Sure, Kevin's got enough experience not to allow the booking to affect his play. Trevor Christie. Nodded away by Gordon Cowans. Not too far though, it's back in the danger area. Phil Brown with the shot. Ballooned it well wide though. Rovers throw. Scott Sellers eager to get the game underway again, but Alan Wright wanted to calm it down. Mike Newell back to Gordon Cowans, looking to skip away from Dougie Keast. Gets the ball back off the clearance by Paul Nicol. Scott Sellers cutting inside as Alan Wright takes men away. Decisive header by Trevor Slack. Gareth Price. Rovers still hovering outside the penalty area though. Richard Brown. Danger still not cleared. David Speedy, can he get it in from the byline? No, he was going too fast and the ball was always running away from him. Keith Hill. Speedy closed down very quickly as that ball dropped to him by this impressive player in the middle of the Kettering defence, Gareth Price. Really has stood out. Craig Skinner in a stern challenge with Paul Bancroft. Dougie Keast, little too slow. Cowans takes it off him. Atkins plays it wide to Kevin Moran. David Speedy. Both him and Mike Newell happy enough to venture out to that left-hand touchline if they feel the necessity is there. Now it's Craig Skinner down the right. Takes the throw himself to Mike Newell. Can't get away from Trevor Slack. Paul Bancroft up to Trevor Christie, but it's still hanging around outside that Kettering penalty area. Richard Brown, he was stumbling though and couldn't recover in time to collect that pass from Craig Skinner. Trevor Christie getting it on his head as he requested. Paul Bancroft away. Well, Trevor Christie losing out this time. Craig Skinner. Poor ball. Gets another chance. Bounces off his head though. It's a little too high for him to bring it down. Richard Hill beaten in the air by Kevin Moran. Atkins and just cut out. David Speedy frustrated there as he thought that it was going to get away from Paul Nicol and set him in the clear on goal. But Paul Nicol just got enough of a touch on it. Well, a few optimistic shouts of Wembley from the Kettering end, and derision comes in from the Blackburn Rovers supporters. I think their hopes are higher than the visitors as Mike Newell tries to take this return from Mark Atkins, but it's put way beyond Mike Newell and David Speedy, and even enough for Paul Bastock to come out and collect. Flick on by Richard Hill. Away by Keith Hill. Forward from Trevor Slack. Goes under Gordon Cowan's foot. And the free kick goes the way of the visitors. Played quickly by Richard Hill to Paul Jones. The return comes off Richard Hill's knee and fortuitously drops to Paul Jones again, but Rovers get it away in no uncertain terms. And it looks as though Kevin Moran could just have stretched himself a little bit, or took a knock from a late challenge by a Kettering forward. I'm not too certain which, but whichever it is, it calls to the attentions of the Rovers physio. Trevor Christie beaten in the air by Keith Hill. Not wide by Dougie Keast, but Atkins too hard in the tackle for them. And Scott Sellers finding David Speedy. Beautiful ball out to Alan Wright. Can he get a good cross? And he certainly can. Edge of the box, Sellers, Speedy, 1-0! What a beautiful build-up by the Rovers. And the end result, with 33 minutes gone, is the first goal. Beautiful ball by Scott Sellers out to Alan Wright over the far side. He sped down the wing, put the cross in. Scott Sellers flicked it on to David Speedy, and he placed it unerringly past Paul Bastock. And with 33 minutes gone, the Rovers open their account. Blackburn Rovers 1, Kettering Town 0. And David Speedy has his first FA Cup goal in the Rovers colours. So will he be as prolific a scorer in this competition as he has been in the Division 2 fixtures? It certainly looks like it on today's form. He'd already hit the crossbar before that. Mike Newell misplacing the pass to Paul Jones, up to Trevor Christie, and suddenly the Blackburn end is awake and throbbing with noise. As suddenly the Twin Towers of Wembley seem to be a little nearer. And certainly the fourth round does. Keith Hill. Up to David Speedy, who must be bubbling with confidence. That goal augmenting the one he got against Cambridge on Wednesday. Scott Sellers to Gordon Cowans. Cross to Kevin Moran. Poor ball. And Dougie Keys trying to put Phil Brown away, but Alan Wright had covered on that left-hand side and robbed him. Kevin Moran to Mark Atkins. David Speedy. Out to Scott Sellers. In fact, it was Alan Wright. My eyesight must be going. Phil Brown. Trevor Christie. Neat touch inside to Phil Brown. Kevin Moran there. Kettering coming forward again, seeking a quick equaliser if they can. Paul Bancroft up the line. Beyond Richard Hill and his namesake Keith Hill. There, I was going to set a clear, but it goes off the back of Richard Hill and out for this throw. Richard Brown to take it. Craig Skinner. Can't elude the attentions of Paul Bancroft. Richard Hill finding this impressive number 3, Paul Jones. Neat pass to this fella fullback Richard Uxford. Good cross. Flicked away from Paul Bancroft by Richard Brown. And now it's the Rovers coming forward again. Scott Sellers. David Speedy to Gordon Cowans. Out to Alan Wright. He's got support from Mike Newell further down the line. Plays it to his feet. 4 men in the box on 3 defenders. Mike Newell finds Mark Atkins. Tries a shot. Comes off the back of Trevor Slack. Gordon Cowans. Calm ball. Out to Alan Wright. Scott Sellers trying to lay it on a plate for Mike Newell. But the challenge from Paul Nicol rebounds off the shins of Mike Newell and behind for a goal kick. Keith Hill winning the duel in the air with Richard Hill. A fierce challenge coming in there from Dougie Keast. Richard Brown none the worse for wear. The referee being a little finicky over a yard when the Rovers wanted to get the game back underway, which they have now. Gordon Cowans up to Mike Newell. Holding off the challenge, but forced to play it back to Richard Brown. He only picks out a red shirt. This time a blue and white half one in the form of Craig Skinner. Keith Hill, it was already out. Well, I suppose for Kettering, with all the publicity the Rovers have had, with the arrival of Kenny Dalglish, new signings and new stadium, this is probably the equivalent to the Rovers going to Arsenal, Spurs, Liverpool, Everton, United, City, etc. Really is a big day out for the team and supporters. I'm sure they'll be out to make the most of it. Richard Hill, back to Paul Bastock. Alan Wright trying to find David Speedy. Paul Nicol doing a good job again of policing the dangerous Rovers centre forward. Trevor Christie beaten in the air again by Kevin Moore, and he has been throughout the whole of this first half. He's been given very little joy. Good run here though, played into Phil Brown. Out wide to Trevor Christie, in space for a change. Richard Brown falling, still gets the header in. Shot scuffed along the ground by Phil Brown, who had hoped to have got a bit more power in it, and accuracy if it comes to that. So just 5 minutes remaining of the first half. Can the Rovers double the lead before they go in for the half-time cuppa? Craig Skinner and David Speedy were doing their best then, but David Speedy's control let him down. He couldn't quite take the pace off the pass. Off the back of Trevor Christie. Gets possession back himself. Being hounded by Kevin Moran. And a free kick given for the pull by Gareth Price. Push to Keith Hill by Gordon Cowans. Mike Newell taking the defence on. Trying to put a defence splitting ball through, but didn't quite get it right. As Scott Sellers was lurking on the left. Another yard or two of pace on it and it might well have found him. Trevor Christie nodding it back. Paul Nicol putting it upfield to Phil Brown. He's quickly closed down. Gets the throw though. Richard Huxford with it. Richard Hill up to Phil Brown. Leaves it to Richard Hill. Sure, he didn't mean that. And that move fell to pieces for the Kettering men. And suddenly the Kettering fans find their voices. Obviously feeling, as they should, that they're still in with a chance in this match as long as the Rovers' lead remains at a slender 1-0 advantage. Scott Sellers showing his skill and getting deserved applause for it. Ron Cowans checking back, laying it into the path of Keith Hill. David Speedy sent tumbling. Sure, Trevor Slack doesn't think it was a foul, but Mr. Phillips does. And a nice smile sends Mr. Slack on his way back into defensive position. Richard Brown trying to get Craig Skinner away, but Paul Nicol covering at the back of the Kettering back four and doing a good job as sweeper. Richard Hill flicking on. Alan Wright there, is his back pass fast enough? Just about. as Phil Brown slid in. But Bobby Mims there ahead of him. Richard Brown trying to find Mike Newell. Gareth Price just shepherding the ball out for the throw to be taken by Paul Bancroft. Richard Brown drops to his feet rather fortuitously, finds Mark Atkins, pushed off the ball. Well, surely that was a penalty. Mr. Phillips totally unimpressed, but Mark Atkins, for me, was going round the defender and about to crack a shot in on goal when he seemed to be blatantly pushed. Gordon Cowans across to Keith Hill. Straight to Richard Hill, who skips round Gordon Cowans. But a poor ball forward goes beyond Phil Brown and into the welcoming arms of Bobby Mims, as the red-shirted men for a moment there look to be creating a dangerous position. Mike Newell. Good ball, pinpoint pass straight to the chest of Craig Skinner. Can he show his pace once more and take on Paul Bancroft? He's doing his best to. Beaten this time, but it drops to Gordon Cowans. High ball into the box. Collected easily enough by Paul Bastock. Richard Hill, little flick to Phil Brown. Can't control it though. Kevin Moran looking for movement up front, decides there isn't any, and spurns that as a route towards the Kettering goal. Decides the best idea is to let Bobby Mims launch this long ball forward onto the head of Mike Newell, but David Speedy was running to the right, not the left. Trevor Christie. Alan Wright getting up above Phil Brown as the half-time whistle goes. And this cup tie is not over by a long way yet. Rovers go into the dressing room with a 1-0 lead, given to them by David Speedy in the 33rd minute after he'd hit the crossbar, and also Mike Newell had been denied a goal by the acrobatic skills of Paul Bastock, the Kettering goalkeeper. Welcome back at the start of the second half. And just to give you some idea of the pedigree of this visiting team, they've got 8 players with previous Football League experience, and in the last 4 seasons they've finished each time in the top 5 of the GM Vauxhall Conference. In other words, they've been within touching distance of the Football League. And in 7th place this season, they've possibly got too much of a gap to make up on the leaders, Colchester and Wickham, but they have got a lot of games in hand, mainly due to the fact that they've had this good FA Cup run through to the 3rd round, having started right back in September in the first qualifying round. Alan Wright with the throw. Back to him by Scott Sellers. These two dominating that little exchange for a moment before they decide to share the ball with Keith Hill. And now Richard Brown. Cross just too far, sorry. Pass just too far ahead of David Speedy. Keith Hill, sorry, I'll get it right yet, knocking the ball away. Trevor Christie back, putting pressure on Keith Hill once more. He's the most experienced member of this Kettering team, and I'm sure well known by Rovers supporters. He's in the latter stages of his career, which started at Leicester, went on to Notts County, Nottingham Forest, Derby County, Manchester City, before he slipped down the ladder to Walsall and Mansfield, and now with Kettering. And looking at him in the first half, he's certainly lost quite a bit of pace, and that's why he's now in the non-league ranks. But you'd expect that after what's been a very distinguished career. I'm sure he's quite a handful in the GM Vauxhall Conference. He's managed 3 goals in the FA Cup to date. Gordon Cowans. David Speedy neatly down his chest and penalised. I don't think David Speedy will believe this when he turns round. He certainly won't. Mark Atkins with a nod forward. Phil Brown can't get there ahead of Kevin Moran. Richard Brown away. Richard Huxford. Scott Sellers policing him all the way. Tracking him down like a hungry wolf after its prey. Kevin Moran up to Mike Newell. Scott Sellers, little chip over the defence to Mark Atkins, and David Speedy unfortunately just strayed a yard offside. Not sure whether that was friendly banter between David Speedy and Paul Bastock. Really combative player, this Rovers number 9. Kevin Moran above Trevor Christie. Richard Huxford inside to Paul Jones. Trevor Christie, and if Phil Brown had been able to control that, he would have been clean through on goal, with only Bobby Mims to beat. He's away again until Richard Brown sends him clattering. Gareth Price. Flick wide by Phil Brown. Can't pick up the return ball. Keith Hill there. Phil Brown. Really playing a full part in this match. Cross in. Neatly down on the chest by Scott Sellers in an unfamiliar position in his own penalty area. David Speedy. Pushing it across to Kevin Moran. Mike Newell holding off the challenge from Richard Huxford, and very nearly a slack piece of play by Kevin Moran, but he was quick enough to recover. Scott Sellers. Is he going to take them on himself? Looks for the return ball from David Speedy. It doesn't reach him. Craig Skinner in a tussle, as he has been throughout this match, with Paul Bancroft. Rovers get the throw. Catching Scott Sellers unawares though. Kevin Moran holds off Trevor Christie and calmly gives it back to Bobby Mims. Neat piece of play by the Republic of Ireland international. Richard Brown up to Mark Atkins, neatly taking down the chest, flicks the ball on, but Craig Skinner not quite that speedy. A misunderstanding between Paul Bancroft and one of his colleagues. I mean, the Rovers can put the pressure on. Craig Skinner to Richard Brown, away from his marker, crossing, and good job Trevor Slack got the header in, because David Speedy was lurking dangerously behind him. Swinging in just beyond Kevin Moran, retrieved by David Speedy, and he wins the corner. Now it's Trevor Christie back helping his defence, as the Rovers go seeking what could be a decisive second goal at the start of this second half. Gordon Cowans to Speedy, to Sellers, runs loose. Mark Atkins very nearly made the most of a miss-it shot by Scott Sellers, but he was off the target, although the power was there, and it was nicely driven all along the ground. Well, Scott Sellers, again given today a fairly free role. You're as likely to find him in the middle of the field as you are on the left-hand touchline. And thoroughly enjoying being back in match action. Our Rovers at this stage will probably be disappointed that they only lead by a single goal. I want to widen the gap as soon as they can. Craig Skinner trying to help them do so. Mike Newell out to Richard Brown. Finds Mike Newell with a return ball as he continues his run into the box. Can't get the centre in though. Gordon Cowans with the corner. Up goes the header from Mike Newell. Bouncing around for a moment in the box. But Kettering now have it in the clear. Scott Sellers pulled up there. Don't tell me this is a recurrence of his groin injury. Certainly limping away for a moment there, looking a bit crestfallen, but let's hope he can run it off. Slices off the boot of Paul Nicol. Forward by Dougie Keast. Kettering substitutes below me warming up, and you wonder how long it will be before Peter Morris, the ex-Ipswich and Norwich player who's now manager of Kettering, waits before throwing on John Graham, his top goal scorer this season with 12 goals. He's got to decide just how long he waits and also how long he gives this player who wasn't expected to appear in this afternoon's match as a result of this knee injury. And if he does throw him on, he's obviously taking the chance that he might break down. Kevin Moran with this free kick. Mark Atkins flicking it on first time. Hooked away to Trevor Christie. Phil Brown in a forlorn chase. Keith Hill looking upfield. Mike Newell flicks it on, but too far ahead of David Speedy. Alan Wright. Mark Atkins giving it back to Alan Wright. Scott Sellers winning the throw off the chest of Richard Huxford. David Speedy just looking behind him to see where the challenge was coming from. Takes it into the box, puts the centre over, half cleared, back to Richard Brown, blocked in the 6-yard box. Another shot in by Gordon Cowans. Before a relief, Paul Bastock grabs hold of the ball. And what Richard Brown would have given to score against his old team. So Brown tugging at Keith Hill and then having a little tap at his ankle, but Rovers centre half just shrugs him off. I suppose one man the Kettering supporters will be disappointed with is Richard Hill. Scored a lot of goals for Northampton. There was a big money signing for Watford before he went on to Oxford, but injury caused him to drop out of the Football League, but he's not really produced anything this afternoon. And it's men like him that you're looking for to take the fight to Blackburn as Craig Skinner comes forward. Gordon Cowans picks up the half clearance, flicked away out of the box. Only as far as Alan Wright, continuing his run forward. Speedy finds him with a return ball. Alan Wright with a cracking cross over the far side. And Mike Newell, just like David Speedy, opens his FA Cup account as well. With 59 minutes gone, surely that is the goal that decides this FA Cup tie. Alan Wright involved in the move twice, a superb cross to the far post, and Mike Newell picked his spot in the top corner of the net. Blackburn Rovers 2, Kettering Town 0. And Peter Morris decides that it's time to make that move I talked about a few minutes ago. He's now thrown his leading goal scorer John Graham into the action to replace Paul Bancroft. But I'll be amazed with the Rovers now comfortably sitting on a 2-goal lead if he's not made that move too late. Although Phil Brown might make me eat my words. No, he won't. Keith Hill will bring it away and the Rovers will go seeking a third. Keith Hill possibly trying a little too much, but it was a superb run from a very deep position in his own half, and he deserves full credit for it, even if it didn't produce an end result. Speedy with a shot, screwing off Paul Nicol, but Paul Bastock able to get down and save the corner. Keith Hill. Phil Brown. Space on the left, but offside. Well, like I said, Kettering Town began the run in the FA Cup in the first qualifying round. And one real entertaining aspect of the FA Cup that provides that magic is the wonderful sounding teams that feature in this competition. I'll just break off a moment as the Rovers come forward once more. Craig Skinner shouting for the return ball. Gordon Cowans decides it's better to lay it back to Scott Sellers through. Oh, and Craig Skinner just let the ball run under his foot. Otherwise it might have been the Rovers' third. I was talking about these wonderful sounding teams. Kettering came through the first three qualifying rounds easily enough. But aren't these wonderfully sounding names? Wisbech away 3-0. Braintree at home 3-1. And then a beauty. Haybridge Swifts at home 3-0. And then in the next two rounds, the fourth qualifying and the first round, they were taken to replays by fellow GM Vauxhall Conference clubs. First of all, Stafford Rangers 0-0 at home, but they won the replay away 2-0. Then in the first round it was Wycombe Wanderers at home 1 apiece. Yet again they won the replay away 2-0. And then a giant killing act, although they're not long out of the non-league ranks. They went to Maidstone and won 2-1 away. And that's the route to this match today against Blackburn Rovers. But it very much looks as though this FA Cup run that's taken them through 6 rounds is coming to an end. And if you think about it, they've come through 6 rounds. The Rovers only need to go through 5 to reach Wembley. Crossing by Alan Wright. Just scooped away. Will it end up in the back of the net eventually? No, it won't. Mark Atkins getting the effort in that was blocked by Paul Bastock. Mike Newell did his best to smuggle it over the line, but failed to do so. And Kettering escape. But they're really beginning to turn it on now, the Rovers. Oh, what a beautiful goal! And yet again, another of the newcomers owns his account. This time, Gordon Cowans with an absolutely blockbuster shot from something like 25 yards. With 65 minutes gone, this tie is over, no question about that, as Blackburn Rovers advance into a 3-0 lead and surely now have earned the place in the 4th round of the competition. And now the only thing that is facing Kettering Town is an overwhelming defeat as the Rovers start to turn on the style. Alan Wright up to David Speedy. Alan Wright once more. Short ball to Scott Sellers. Speedy with him if he wants him. Tries to take them on himself and settles for the corner. Scott Sellers back to Gordon Cowans. Well, I was talking about Trevor Christie and Richard Hill and how experienced they were in Football League ranks. Well, the other 6 players in this Kettering team with Football League experience have spent it in the lower divisions, with the likes of Peterborough, Walsall, Scunthorpe, Bury, Chesterfield, Lincoln City. But that experience isn't doing them any good today, as the Rovers are rampant. In comes the cross from Mike Newell, but it only finds the waiting arms of Paul Bastock. Richard Huxford. Can Kettering keep this scoreline down to reasonable proportions? That's the only question left. The Rovers have now taken absolute complete command. Scott Sellers, Alan Wright, going like a train up this left-hand side. He's a good crosser of a ball as well, and a good job it was nicked away from Mark Atkins. Into the challenge, flying challenge at that goes Gordon Cowans. Beautiful save, fisting it away from Mike Newell. That was Paul Bastock, the goalkeeper, but it didn't matter anyway. Mike Newell was a yard offside. But Gordon Cowans, buoyed up by that magnificent goal, really flew into that tackle. And then went forward and laid the ball on a plate for Mike Newell. First bit of the action there for John Graham, but he only got a slight touch on the ball. And I think even his services can't rescue Kettering cause now. Atkins still as eager as ever to prevent Kettering getting even a consolation goal. And they got quite a good away record, Kettering. They've won 5, drawn 3 and lost 1 of the Vauxhall Conference matches, scoring 16 and conceding 7. Well, that ball's safely in the arms of Bobby Mims until he dispatches it up to David Speedy, that is. Can he get away from the attentions of Trevor Slack? He can, but only by fouling him in the process. Gordon Cowans playing it short to Keith Hill. So hope the Rovers don't sit on this. The fans want to see them going forward and find the back of net as many times as possible. There's no sentiment in football, and that's certainly true here this afternoon, as John Graham tries to put Phil Brown beyond Keith Hill, but the Rovers centre half has had a dominant match, just as the man alongside him, Kevin Moran, has done. In fact, it's been a good all-round display by all 11 Rovers players out on the pitch. And they've certainly put Kettering Town in the place. Gordon Cowans up to Mike Newell, looking for the gap, shoots, and it's in the back of the net. And I think Gordon Cowans won't mind me saying that that was an even better goal than the one he scored. Mike Newell just looked up, disdainfully planted it beyond Paul Bastock into the back of the net. So with 71 minutes gone, Mike Newell has his second goal of the match, and the Rovers' lead is a very emphatic one now. Blackburn Rovers 4, Kettering Town 0. And in the 71st minute, David Speedy comes off and gives Simon Garner the opportunity to come on and try and increase what is a significant tally of goals in the FA Cup in his career with the Rovers. Nice to see the Rovers' all-time leading scorer back on the pitch. And with the opportunity in the last 20 minutes to have a few pots at goal. Richard Huxford to Paul Jones. Phil Brown robbed by Alan Wright. Looking for support, finds it in Mark Atkins, who nonchalantly plays it off the feet of Richard Huxford in order to gain this throw. Scott Sellers, cheeky chappy attitude from him now, of course. Not quite paying off on that occasion. John Graham having a dab. Chance for Trevor Keast, but blocked by Craig Skinner. Paul Jones. It's back with Trevor Slack. Plants the ball forward. Easy enough for Keith Hill to clear. So, one man who will be looking for another to complete his hat-trick, Mike Newell. Wonder if he'll achieve it. Alan Wright for once, finding a red shirt rather than a Rovers colleague. And Bobby Mims, who's had a very quiet afternoon, quite happy to pick up the pieces that drop into his box and send the Rovers forward towards the Blackburn end. Who've certainly enjoyed the 3 goals that have found their way into the back of the net up there in this second half, and there might be more to come as Garner's free on the left with Scott Sellers and Mike Newell in the box. Mike Newell turning, trying to get the shot in, gives it up and passes to Garner. Little header in by Scott Sellers, but he hadn't got the power behind it and just dribbled all along the deck to Paul Bastock. Everybody eager to get on the score sheet now. And the chance here for a reply. But whereas Gordon Cowans and Mike Newell both unerringly found the back of the net from that distance, Phil Brown was about 4 or 5 yards out and put it over the top. Headed forward by Paul Nicol. Flicked on to the centre forward Trevor Christie. But Boy Mims there ahead of him. But we've already seen in the few minutes that he's been on the pitch just what a danger John Graham could have presented if he'd been fully fit. I don't think it would have changed the result, but it might have changed the scoreline. But at least he's got the chance to get out on the pitch and play in a big match at a big ground against what is certainly fast becoming a big club in Blackburn Rovers. Mark Atkins can't find Craig Skinner. A little bit too much power in his pass. Trevor Christie losing out once more. He really has had a frustrating time, the Kettering centre forward, as this ball nearly drops to Mike Newell, but cleared downfield up to the halfway line, to Phil Brown in fact. Through to Richard Hill, but Alan Wright there ahead of him and prods it back to Bobby Mims. So we're moving to the last quarter of an hour of the match, with the Rovers 4 goals up. It's the kind of scoreline we would have looked for before this match started, but games aren't played on paper, they're played out on a green pitch. And the Rovers have certainly produced the goods this afternoon. And really haven't given Kettering any opportunity at all of any giant killing act. They found it very difficult to match this table-topping second division side that's surely not only bound for the Premier Division but also for a good cup run. Thoughts now obviously will be turning towards the draw for the fourth round and what kind of intriguing tie awaits the Ewood Park men. As Alan Wright finds Mike Newell, and I'm not certain if that was a shot or a centre. Whichever it was, it didn't fulfil either description. Over to Richard Oxford. Forward by Paul Nicol. Flicked on into the path of Phil Brown. And if anybody has deserved a goal this afternoon, it's that number 8 who's never given up, battling up in the Kettering forward line. It's only a consolation goal, and I don't think we'll deny Kettering that. With 78 minutes gone, Phil Brown does find the target this time, lifting it over the head of Bobby Mims, and the Kettering fans and players have something to celebrate. Although it's far too late to affect the result of this game. Richard Hill. Back to Paul Jones. Richard Hill again. Kevin Moran. Well up in the air to head it clear. Now, are Kettering encouraged enough to come back seating in another? They've given it everything they've got in this game. They can certainly be proud of their efforts, but the Rovers have just been too good for them. John Graham. Richard Hill bounces off his foot and Richard Brown hooks it away from him. Gareth Price getting the return ball, only finding Craig Skinner. Cowan's leaving it to Craig Skinner. Acres of room up that right hand side, although Kettering defenders are getting back now. And a crossing that just went beyond Mike Newell. Neat piece of play by Richard Huxford. Certainly not short of confidence. Richard Hill. As Kettering try to make the scoreline look even more respectable. And the Rovers go up the other end trying to make it look worse. And they may do now. As Scott Sellers advances on goal. Squares it across. Will it bounce? Right, no it won't. Simon Garner just waiting for that ball to drop. And Paul Bastock did enough to put him off. And then a playful interlude between Simon Garner and the Kettering goalkeeper, which just personifies the spirit in which this tie has been played. Alan Wright. Kevin Moran. Deciding the best course is to knock it back to Bobby Mims. Now he throws it out to Richard Brown in space. Craig Skinner cutting inside, still in possession. Evading the challenge. Can he get the shot in? Gives it to Garner. Oh, and he hits the post! Well, the Rovers so near to a fifth. as a real blockbuster from Simon Garner goes powering past Paul Bastock and off the right hand post, and Scott Sellers coming off the pitch in the 81st minute, being replaced by Nicky Reid. So I'm sure Scott Sellers will be happy enough to got 81 minutes in. Paul Jones. Played back to Richard Huxford by Trevor Christie. Gordon Cowan's calming off ball back to Bobby Mims. It's asking him to come and collect it on the edge of the box and set Richard Brown away on the right hand side. Eludes Mike Newell, but drops to Gordon Cowans, motioning players towards him. Simon Garner after the return ball from Mark Atkins, just a little bit too much pace on it. Keith Hill there. Well, the Rovers in my time of supporting them have never gone out to a non-league club, and they're keeping up that record this afternoon. Thanks to the programme editor. Give you a quick rundown on the record in the last 20 years, or at least I will do when this move comes to an end, and it might do with a fifth. Mark Atkins foiled by Paul Bastock. Kettering struggling to get it away. They do now. First two non-league clubs they met in that 20-year period, Willington and Altrincham, took them to replays, but the Rovers went through 6-1 and 2-0 respectively in the replays. Since then they've done it at the first attempt, at Matlock 4-1, at Kidderminster 2-0, 2-0 at home to Stafford Rangers, and 1-0 at Welling. And who will forget the winner that day? A headed goal by the man who didn't score many goals, never mind with his head, little Ronnie Hildersley. And 4-1 so far to date, as Kettering give the opportunity for another player to step onto the famous Ewood turf, this time Dave Waller. Coming on in the 84th minute as a replacement for Richard Huxford. John Graham won't reach that. So we're moving to the last 5 minutes of the match. Craig Skinner. Gordon Cowans. Superb ball, straight to the feet of Richard Brown. First time ball inside to Nicky Reid. Mark Atkins to Keith Hill, continuing his run. Rovers decide to come back to Gordon Cowans. Possession football. Craig Skinner puts Mike Newell free. Straight across the 6-yard box. And Mark Atkins on the far post, unable to reach it. Gareth Price, and that's man Phil Brown there again. Hooks his cross in, flicked away by Keith Hill, once again coming to the rescue of the Rovers and denying Paul Nicol, who really hurled himself bodily at that cross. But Keith Hill too strong for him. Really is becoming a dominant player, whether it be at left back, and it has been in recent times, or in the centre of the Rovers' defence. Bobby Mims up, confidently clutching at the corner. Craig Skinner, as that ball slides under the feet of Gareth Price. Mike Newell cutting into the box, curling it, oh, denied his hat-trick. Garner might put it in now. He's put it wide. Well, the Rovers won't come any closer to a fifth goal or to Mike Newell's hat-trick. He curled it beautifully beyond Paul Bastock. It looked destined for the bottom corner, but it clipped the bottom of the post and came away. Craig Skinner to Mike Newell. Perhaps the Rovers aren't finished yet. Still got an opportunity to go nap. There's a cracking ball from Gordon Cowan, sets Richard Brown away. Hasty clearance from Paul Nicol, gets it out of the danger area. Richard Brown with a cross. Garner turning, but his shot blocked. In fact, it was Mike Newell. Gordon Cowans to Mike Newell. Mark Atkins. Garner screaming for it. Atkins tries to repeat the goal scoring exploits of Cowans and Newell, but he doesn't show the same touch and puts it well wide. But it was well worth the attempt. Craig Skinner. Flicked on. Crossed. Blocked. And back to the goalkeeper. As Nicky Reid tried to present an opportunity for either Mike Newell or Simon Garner to score. But denied this time by the Kettering defence. Keith Hill. Craig Skinner. Just pushing it back to Kevin Moran. Rovers happy enough to build calmly and coolly. Just a bit too high for Mark Atkins to get any power behind that cross from Keith Hill. John Graham chasing the ball out to the touchline. Just fails to keep it in play. The other substitute, Dave Waller, trying a shot. Bobby Mims scrambling across his goal line for a moment there. It eluded him, but it also eluded the post. And that's the last action of the match. And also the last action in the FA Cup for the valiant Kettering Town team. And I hope they and their supporters have thoroughly enjoyed the day out at Ewood Park, as the Rovers have moved in convincing style into the fourth round of the Cup. Blackburn Rovers 4, Kettering Town 1. A hard first half. Speedy hit the bar and then gave the Rovers the lead in the 33rd minute. Mike Newell with a far post header put them 2 goals ahead. And then two absolutely cracking goals from long distance by Gordon Cowans and Mike Newell, which left Paul Bastock, the Kettering Town goalkeeper, clutching at fresh air. Phil Brown scored a consolation goal, but the Rovers came so close to going nap. Simon Garner hit the post, and Mike Newell also hit the post, which could have given him his hat-trick. And nice touch from the Rovers supporters. They're standing and applauding this valiant non-league team from Northampton off the pitch, who raised their arms in acknowledgement of a wonderful gesture. So we now await a return to league action against Bristol City on Saturday, and let's hope the Rovers not only keep it going in the league, but also give us something that's been lacking in recent times, a good FA Cup run.